Hi everyone. I wanted to talk briefly about experimental designs, especially the issue of between groups and what might entail, what those might entail, and some problems with them. One in particular, and I have a sort of a goofy illustration for you to hopefully illustrate the problem. So, in between groups designs, we generally speaking randomly assign to two conditions. And that what that means is when participants come in, we do something like flip a coin, and heads goes in one condition, tails goes in another condition. Now the other example of this of a between groups design is when we use a subject variable to differentiate the groups. So if we're comparing men versus women, old people versus young people, we might divide up groups along ethnicities. So Asian Americans might go in one group, and African Americans might go in another. Those sorts of identifiers, those subject variables, we're not manipulating or we're not assigning necessarily in the same way. This is when we get sort of volunteers and we assign to two groups. So the problem with random assignment is this issue of equivalent groups, and your book says that the way we get out of this is through a process called matching. So I'll try to illustrate this. Now, we can generalize from here. The simplest case is when we have two conditions or two treatments or two groups. But if we had 4 conditions or 3 conditions or 6 conditions or 12 conditions or treatments or groups or whatever, we could do the same thing. We would just have different sort of probabilities of which group you go into, and that process we sometimes refer to as block randomization. But we'll get to that eventually. So, in a random assignment situation, as I alluded to, we usually start with a very simple process. We have volunteer participants, and we have 2 conditions: condition A, condition B. Okay, so these are not subject identifiers. This might be drug versus placebo, method 1 of therapy versus method 2 of therapy. It might be you get emotionally provocative words and the other group doesn't. Whatever your independent variable that you're manipulating, the experimenter manipulation, so non-subject variables, we assign participants to one of 2 conditions. And the way that this is done oftentimes is that when they come in, we flip a coin, and heads you go into condition A, and tails you go into condition B. So to illustrate, what I have here set up a little scenario where I have condition A and condition B, and we get a participant. Right? This guy comes in, and we flip a coin. It comes up heads. He gets assigned to condition A. We get our next volunteer participant. They come in. We flip a coin. Comes up tails. We assign this person to condition B. The next volunteer comes in. We flip a coin. It comes up tails. Gets assigned to condition B. Fourth participant comes in. We flip a coin. Heads. Gets assigned to condition A. Next participant goes into next participant. Next participant. Goes next participant. Goes next participant, next participant. So we just flip a coin, and depending on whether it comes up heads or tails, we assign that person to one or 2 of the conditions. So here's our last participant, I think, that we flip the coin, it comes up heads, he gets into condition A. So when we're done, what we have is our participants randomly assigned to the 2 treatment conditions or 2 experimental conditions. Now, this is just the result of flipping a coin and randomly assigning the participant to one condition or another. This is purely by chance, but what we wind up with is a couple of problems. These groups are non-equivalent, okay? We have all the nerds in one group and all the goths in another group, okay? Now, when we're flipping a coin, we expect that nerdiness and gothiness are assumed to be spread out equally in both conditions, but they don't have to be, okay? They can randomly be placed all in one group. If all the nerds can go in one group and all the goths in the other, and that's just the way it goes. So to take out that possibility, the solution is matching. Okay? Now, we also have the debate or the problem of equivalent numbers, and that is we had wound up with 7 nerds and 5 goths. Maybe we want to do something about that, and that's pretty easy. What we do is we eliminate subjects and select ones that maybe fill this other criteria. So that's easy. The second solution, matching to this issue, what we do is we pair or we match a goth with a nerd with a goth, a nerd with a goth, a nerd with a goth, a nerd with a goth. So we have pairs of participants matched on this variable of nerdy gothiness, right? And then what we do is we flip a coin. We flip coins, heads and tails. Heads goes into one condition, tails goes in the other. So what we wind up with is exactly the same number of nerds and the same number of goths in each of the 2 conditions. We also wind up with all women in one condition and all men in another condition. So the matching along the nerdiness, gothiness dimension worked, but not along the gender dimension. So matching ensures equivalence along the dimension that you match on, but not others. And the problem with this is what you might refer to, or you might call matching ad infinitum, and that is to infinity. You're going to be matching over and 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 over again and you never really know whether your groups are equivalent. You can always wind up with a dimension in which the groups are non-equivalent. So the solution to this problem largely is a within subject design, which we'll get to shortly. Thanks.